All right, welcome to Python Basics. So let's start with talking about variables and data types in Python. So variables, what are variables? Variables are used to store data. Python uses dynamic typing. They are basically used to store data. That's what variables are. Keep that in mind. Variables are used to store data. So when you want to store a particular data set, variables are used to store them. And I'm going to show you how to use that. But let's learn about this basics first. Now, data types, you have different types of like data types. Yeah, common include integer, which is always int, like it's represented with int. We have floating point numbers, which are floats. We call them floats. They are always decimal number. Integers are just whole number. It can be a positive number or a negative number. While floats are always in decimal form or floats, as in that's what we call it in Python. Then we also have strings, which are something like hello, my name is this, that, and all of that. This is a typical example of a string. Then we have booleans. Booleans are statements that are either true or false. So when you have statement that has to go with either true or false, they are called booleans. If you have statements that like string, like sentence, they are called strings. And if you have a number that is in a decimal format or has a decimal number in it, they are called floats. And a positive or a negative number is called an integer. Remember that variables are used to store data. Now let's see a typical example of this. Now this is a Python program. It says name Alice, age 30, height 5.6, and is student true. So let's see how this will look when we try to run it on the Python environment. So sorry, let's just, in order not to waste our time, let's do this. Let's just copy this, Control C. All right, you can now see that. Now let's go back to the, so we said that variables are used to store data, right? It says Python uses a dynamic typing. So if you look at this now, it says name equals to what? Name equals to Alice. So the data set we are trying to store is Alice, and this is the what? The variable, right? The variable is the name, right? And the data set we are trying to store is Alice. Same thing as age. This is the variable, and this is what? The value. This is the variable here, height, and this is the value. This is also a variable, right? We are using this to store this data true, which is the value. So let's head back to our Python. So now that we have this name to be a variable, right? This is the name, the variable. This is the what? The value. And it's important to note that name equals to Alice is a string, while age equals to 30 is an integer, which is either a positive integer or a negative integer, basically numbers. Height are floats, right? Because most of the time they have to do with a decimal number in it. So 5.6, that's a float, not an integer. It's a number, yes, but the fact that it has a decimal number in it or a dot in it makes it a float. Then we also have a student, which is true. There, of course, this is a boolean. It can either be a true statement or a false statement. So Alice may either be a student or Alice is not a student. So if Alice is not a student, we are going to be writing false here. But if Alice is a student, we're going to be writing true. So for this, if Alice is 5 points, let's say 5.0, this is how we're going to write it, not just 5, right? So but let's keep it at 5.6. So keep in mind, variables are used to store what? They are used to store data, right? And name here is the variable, Alice here is the what? The value or the data that's been stored. Now let's run this and let's see how it will look like. So we're trying to run it. So, okay, so this program is just a blank state stuff, so it runs successfully. So if I'm going to call a function out, or maybe not a function, if I say print no, sorry, you can see now it prints the name Alice, right? So oh, sorry about this. So I said print name. This is name. What is inside name? Alice, right? So that is why I can have Alice to be printed here. So if I'm saying print age, right? Print age. So what am I going to be getting? 30, right? Because that is what we inserted. Age is 30. So if I'm printing age, which is equals to 30, so I'm going to get a value of 30. Same thing as if I'm printing height. Right. So let's print height and let's see what to look like. So 5.6, which is our height, 5.6. So now when you're doing all of this, you need to be very careful of typographical error, because if you write your height like this, maybe you mistakenly write double H, if you are running it, it would give a error, because there's no variable that has this, right? Also, it's important to note that Python is case sensitive. Python is case sensitive. If you're writing your capital H, there's going to be an error, right? This is an error code, right? There's nothing as such as capital H in this height, so you must ensure that it is the same thing that you are calling, the same thing. Python is very, very case sensitive. Some programming languages are not really case sensitive, but Python is very case sensitive. All right, so that is that about that. Thank you.